All right, Jeff Arcuri, thanks for joining us, dude.
What's up, dude?
We appreciate you spending some time with us, man.
Thanks for having me.
You and I were chatting just at lunch, and you talked about coming into comedy and like going through the grind. And I think one of the fascinating parts that anytime I think about a comedian is like you hear Chappelle say like he was like 13 and he was going to the DC clubs, and I think every comedian's got an interesting story about where they were like, this is what I want to do, and then you take that first leap. What was that for you? When did you know you wanted to do comedy?
When I did it, like it was I think so. Basically, I was oddly enough I was selling cell phones, and a guy came in and wanted to buy a phone, and I was
Like
like,
a kiosk in a mall?
No, just store.
Oh.
And he was like, I was just asking what he did, and he told me he was a comedian. I was like, oh, how does somebody get into that? And he's like, there's a class you can take. So I took a comedy class in Michigan, and then it was like a 6-week course, and 3 weeks in, the guy was like, we hadn't done any shows yet, and I haven't done any open mics or anything yet. And he goes, hey, there's like a comedy contest with a fallout on Tuesday. It was like a Saturday when he texted me, or Sunday. And I was like, sure, I'll do it, whatever, screw it. And then I had like family come out. First ever time on stage, I did like 6 minutes. I think 2 jokes were kind of funny, really stupid. I think one of them, like punchlines, was like Mario Lopez or something stupid, but it felt amazing. And I didn't even place in the contest, but it just felt really good. And then I get off stage and I was like, I go to my mom, I was like, this is what I want to do. And I'll never forget, she goes, oh, honey, like that is all she said. Because it was such a bad, but I felt good. It felt really good, you know? And that's really what I just wanted to chase that. Because I didn't know what I wanted to do up until that point. I was just going to community college just to get general studies degrees. And until I was like, I don't want to just do business. I want to like do something that I look forward to that's challenging, you know, it's like a mountain to conquer, as opposed to like, you know, if you want to become a retail sales rep, you can do that in a couple weeks. Just apply and then you're doing it. And it's like, I wanted something that was like really hard to get to, you know?
You said when I did it felt really good. What about it felt good?
I mean, the dopamine and the endorphins you get from
right?
a good laugh. No, just that's a pretty chemical reaction to when people laugh at things you say. It feels good inside your head.
It is. It's like a drug.
Very
right?
indulging. Everyone's self-indulging on stage. They're really like, you know, just like when people all laugh at what you just said, it just feels great.
It does. It is.
Yeah.
It is like an addiction. You're like, I want more of that.
That's why a lot of comics get into like hard drugs. Like there's a lot of them, like, because you chase that dragon, and then when it's done, the come down is pretty severe for a lot of comics. Like, you know, when we perform on the road, and you do a sold out show, and it's amazing, and you kill it, and then you go back to your hotel room alone, and then everyone goes home and goes back to their life. You're like, oh, it's over, it's done now. But then you just do the next one. But some comics won't have a show or whatever, and then they'll be like, all right, let's just do some heroin or whatever. Not me, but
others.
Mm-hmm.
So other than the comedy class, like when you did your first show, did you bomb?
No, I mean, no, I did a couple. Like I said, I got a couple laughs on it. It wasn't a full bomb. It was a very supportive audience. It was like a new comics with their families there. Like it wasn't, nobody was just like, boo, or like, that's not the caliber of comedy. It was, people were being very nice.
That's not why I came to this open mic night for free comedy.
It wasn't an open mic, it was like a contest thing. But yeah, open mics, yeah. I mean, I've bombed hundreds of times.
Yeah.
You still, you know, not as much anymore. You get better at adjusting, you know.
People say to comedians, they say, oh my God, you're so brave. I don't know how you go up there and do that. And it's a weird word to call it brave, because you're just going up and using words, and if you don't succeed, nothing happens. Why do you think other people, you know what I'm saying? Like in I'm talking in a more existential like nothing happens.
Okay, yeah.
It's not like you're like, oh, you're brave for jumping out of a plane, because
you can say the same at like somebody's brave for defending jobs or something like that, where all you did was click a mouse. You know what I mean? Yeah. There is bravery.
Why do you think people say that?
Because it's the bigger fear than death in America is public speaking. It's the biggest fear across everybody in the country. It's the highest, like, it's a bigger fear than death. I've heard that so many times.
Yeah.
And so people would rather die than have to stand in front of a room of 500 people and talk straight for an hour or 30 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever it is. That scares people a lot, public speaking.
And I think the added element, that's where I'm fascinated by the science of humor and comedy, is getting up and speaking in front of people. Like if I'm going to deliver a talk on whatever, like computer technology, right? I don't have to I don't have to entertain. I just have to educate. And there's really no metric for, like,
Sure.
right? But when you're expected to entertain, I think that additional piece of pressure, I think that's why people go, I could never do that. People go, yeah, I could get up and give a speech if I had to. Like, it's terrifying. But if I'm expected to laugh, or if I'm expected to make people laugh and I don't, like, that's just terrifying to people.
Sure. Yeah, that adds another layer of fear, but I do think the most of fear comes from the public speaking part. Is from because even if you say, like, oh, you know, show me a comic that's 3 years in, 2 years in, and I'll show you a lot of things that they do wrong on stage in terms of body language. Like, comics will talk, like, when comics do jokes like this, that's them literally protecting their vital organs because they're scared right now. So they just cover themselves, like they cover their belly. When people, like, when they, you know, you ever have somebody, you can see somebody with bad body language, like that. When people touch their face on stage, that's not a good look. That's just telling everyone you're kind of lying about what you're saying. Looking down, looking up, like, these are so many small things that if, like, delivering punchlines, like, and that's when I told her to, you know, take off or whatever. Like, that is not as good as if I say, that's when I told her to take off. Like, you play to the center of the room on punchlines. There's a lot of body language stuff. And so even when somebody says, like, I'm not scared of public speaking, all right, I'm going to go watch you public speak. And then I can watch you be scared. Like, a lot of the times people, like, you know, they'll have, like, tics that they do. They'll play with the microphone wire or whatever it is that, like, that shows to me that they're a little nervous up there, you know? And that doesn't go away for a long time, in my opinion.
Do you study that stuff about yourself and then try and
watching
correct it?
videos?
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. That's why I hated listening and watching myself for so long, because I just didn't, I was like, oh, I hate doing it. I'm like, there's a reason you hate watching yourself, because you're messing up. And you don't want to watch that. So then when I started, just sat down and I started watching every single one of my sets from video, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I was doing this on that punchline. Or, you know, I've been playing, I have a bad habit right now where I keep, like, going like this while I'm talking to somebody, like on stage or something. And that, I don't know, I gotta stop that, because that's not a good look. I didn't like how that looked on camera. So it's important to watch yourself, for sure.
Do you think you pick it up more than the audience does? Or do you think the audience, like, unconsciously actually...
I think they subconsciously, they pick up,
they pick up on
associate.
cues?
When somebody's nervous, you can notice it. You're not like, it's because she's playing with the wire. You just notice somebody being a little antsy.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, this isn't a confident person right now. That's, honestly, it's such a big secret in comedy is the confidence, even if it's faux.
Yeah.
Is just going up there and just, like, I've had people compliment me on silences. Where, like, you're comfortable with, like, in between when nobody's laughing and you're, like, thinking of the next thing. I go, yeah, I mean, they'll wait. It's not a big deal. Like, you don't need to fill every second with sound. You know, you can, like, let the laughs trickle out and then take a second to think and then start talking again. No one's going to be like, oh my God, that was such a gap of time. I can't believe it. You're the only one thinking that, if you think that, you know?
It's interesting because you obviously have been in the game for a long time. What, 13 years?
13 years, yeah, as of March.
And you've dedicated a lot of, just hearing you talk, you've dedicated a lot of like academic time. If I don't know what another word is, like studying the industry and studying psychology and what makes people tick and what makes audiences, how it resonates with them.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I don't know that people do that in every industry they're in. I don't know if they study that thoroughly, like the psychology of, you know, whether you're in sales or whatever you're in. There's always a human interaction. It's interesting to hear you really dissect the audience. You know, we take for granted the really good comedians that, you know, the Chappelles and the Chris Rocks and the Gaffigans, the guys the household names. Are they just naturally good comedians, or do you, I know you've opened and you've performed on stage with some very big names. Are those guys also students of the game, or are they just really good?
Anybody successful in comedy was not good at comedy for a while. Nobody got on stage and was like, damn, he's got it. No, you need to fail so long before you even start to succeed in comedy. You have to go in knowing
people know that. You know, I'm a guy who does like stand up on amateur circuits. I don't claim to have a really insight, but I don't think the average person, they look and they go, remember when Chappelle was 19 and he was trying to break through and he was just doing the grind, he was bombing. People just know.
Yeah.
You know, Nate Bargatze is a big name and he's been doing it for a long time, and you know, they don't know about Kreischer, that, you know, Bert's been in the game for 20 years before.
It takes 10 years to make an overnight success. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
That's
an
like, interesting way to put it.
People got like upset with like people were like, oh, look, Amy Schumer just got popular because she's a woman. She was doing the road for 12 years before she even started getting popular. People don't realize that there is so much behind the scenes and so much work that you don't see, that when you actually saw that person, that was them already past the point of where they thought they succeeded.
Yeah.
They've already gained it. Like, I've had people that were like, I've been following you since June. I got in before anyone knew you. And I'm like, all right, man, I was 12 years into comedy at that point, too. You know what I mean? My mom is the only one that's the only constant fan since when I started.
What else goes into being successful as a comedian? That's an open-ended question because there's a lot, but...
Writing, making sure you have material that's, you're constantly like updating it at least, or like, I don't know. I've been doing a thing, I heard Bill Burr talk about it, where I don't give up on old premises because there's a reason why I thought they were funny. So like, I'll go back to something from 5 years ago and then I'll say it again and I'll go through the beats of why I think that's funny again on stage. As a comic, 5 years more experience. Like, you're a different comic than you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, because you've adapted to a lot more different things, and you're a better writer, and you're quicker, and the way you say things is better. And so that takes time, but going back and doing that. So I think writing is important. Practice. Don't let yourself stagnate. Like, just make sure that you're always getting up. But it does happen. I've known people that are like, how long have you been doing comedy? And they're like, 5 years. And like, well, there was a good, I don't know, there was 1 year I only did it a couple times. And then, 2018, I kind of just, but since 2017, I've been doing it. And it's like, all right, you've really done comedy 6 months. Because if you collect, you should be doing it at least wherever you are as much as you can per week. If there are 3 open mics in your city per week, you should be doing 3. If you're doing 2, you're being lazy, because all you're saying is like, if there's 10 open mics you can do in your city, then do 10 open mics. Like, you'll only get better. And if it's like, oh, well, I can't generate that much material, then practice the old and try new, throw things in the wall. And then randomly you get a laugh and you're like, oh my God, I just added a minute to all my time. But every minute is so crucial because all you need is 50 of them, 45 of them, and you have an hour. You have your special.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's why I always tried to there was 1 year I was trying to do like a new minute every week. And it ended up being too difficult because that's an hour in a year. That's what George Carlin was doing, was an hour a year, And it's only a minute a week. But you know how long a minute can be up there?
Yeah.
When it's not good. So what my minimum is for myself is 15 seconds. I never like to go more than 15 seconds without a punchline. Because then you can really notice the drag.
That's a pretty quick setup and punch.
Not really.
No?
We count out loud to 15 right now. It's going to take a while. I know how it takes 15 seconds, but if you're on stage and like right now, let's see, if I just put my clock up real quick.
And if we start 15 seconds.
If I just start talking right now and I'm telling you guys a story about how I got hit by a car, and I flew off my bike and it was a sunny day out. I remember the guy, he just came out of nowhere and popped into the thing. And then I fell off the bike. 15, that was too long.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if it's something stupid or whatever, but as long as I generate some kind of laugh line, that's minimum is 15. I never want to go past 15 seconds on a punchline. There's sometimes when I tell a story, I'll let something sit, but no more than 15 seconds. I had a guy, when I was doing cruises, I was talking to some guy about that, and he was like, he came to all my shows and then made a spreadsheet, and he goes, your average is 12.8 seconds or whatever is what your average punchline per. And I'm like, oh, thanks, man. That's some crazy shit. Just to come out and be like, I've done some work for you, And he had.
Are we best friends?
Yeah.
The top of the spreadsheet was labeled best friends.
No, I just gave him a lock of my hair and told him have fun.
When we were having lunch, you said, I've played some really awkward venues, or I've had some really awkward times.
Yeah.
And there's I've watched a couple of the Netflix specials. Though I forget the name of the one that was. It was about a couple comedians that were trying to compete for the Montreal comedy.
JFL. Yeah.
And for JFL, thank you. And it showed them playing, just being willing, to use that, to your point, just they played anywhere. They were at a backyard barbecue with 20 people, only 10 of whom were actually listening. The others were playing in the pool. They were at an open mic playing with 3 people, and the only 3 people in the audience were other comedians who were waiting to go up, and they were all studying their material. So they're literally playing to nobody.
Mm-hmm. New York, you got to pay to go to an open mic. You pay $5 and you get in to perform for other people who paid $5. Like at some places in the city, it sucks. Like I'm so glad I did my due diligence. But sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was going to say, I don't think people know that about like comedians who are going through the grind and making this a career, and just to your point, willing to get in the reps. What are some awkward places or awkward times?
I've had some weird ones. There was a while where I was working for a financial institution, and just doing sales, and they knew I did comedy because I've had and they knew I did comedy, and their business development rep like quit suddenly, and it was just about to be the season where they have like you go out to these places. Like I don't want to give it away because I don't want people to find out quickly, but I was doing power plants. So what they would said was, hey, can you go speak and get people to maybe like move their loans to us, this and that, at these power plants, and you do comedy. So we told them you could do a little bit of comedy time, and I go, sure, because they go, we're paying you double time plus travel time, and like some of these places, power plants were like 4 hours away, so I was getting paid 8 hours of work plus the 2 hours I was there.
Yeah.
And just driving, and I'm like, this is sick, like this is great, and I get a lot of money for it, but it was like I'd have to like get up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., drive 3 hours to go to a nuclear power plant, get my whole car checked. The whole process took like an hour and a half to get into the power plant. Like they had like full armed guards.
Yeah.
They played military games like to just keep themselves fresh. If there'd be like 50 yards of cement blocks, like 10 by 10 cement blocks that would prevent anybody from crashing like a truck into the place or whatever. Yeah. There's so much security. That blew my mind. And people that live there, they are like 2 weeks on, 1 week off type of thing, I guess. Yeah. Where they like live on the nuclear campus, and they don't go home. But they start their workday with this like big like, hey, we have like, we have somebody from like Wounded Warrior Project, this and that, and then we have a comedian, or we have Jeff from so-and-so.
The sales rep / comedian.
Yeah, and they'll be like, hey guys, and I do a joke like,
This is like 8:30 in the morning.
Yeah, and it was engineers, So it was like 95% just men about to go to work at a power plant. And I'm like, my mom's a kooky lady, and our APR is at an all-time low. Like, it was the grossest I've ever felt, but I was also like, hey, I'm doing it. I'm technically doing comedy, even though it was a nightmare. Because sometimes I just do 3 jokes and be like, I'm sorry I even tried, guys. Let me just go into the statistics and the numbers here, But it still was fun. I've had some really weird gigs, I've done a strip club off a highway as a comedian.
Like in between, like the stripper sets?
Kind of. Yeah, there was a guy, he set up a bunch of shows for us, and then we're doing the shows, and he's like, oh, this one's on a strip club, by the way. And I was like 20.
And this wasn't like on a separate night. This was still in the night where they're also doing strip shows.
No, this was like 5 p.m. This isn't even the evening, dude. This is like the sun was
5
still
p.m.
out.
on a Tuesday. The A team's in there waiting for whatever Charlemagne to get up there.
What?
Isn't that like a stripper name?
Charlemagne?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't go to strip clubs. Isn't that I don't know what their names are.
Yeah, if those strippers, 50 Cent and Blade.
Charlemagne. Clearly, I clearly don't know shit about strip clubs.
Yeah,
so
no, I mean,
welcome, wife.
now it makes me think you know too much about it. You're like, the strip club name, maybe.
I don't know.
That's Cookie or Candy or something like that.
All right.
Charlemagne.
Yeah. Well, I go to high-end strip clubs apparently.
Yeah. Oh God, that's so funny. Yeah. But yeah, I remember like getting
Her Majesty, the people names like that.
Yeah. No, I don't know. But like that was crazy. Yeah.
I'm gonna find a stripper named Charlemagne, and I'm gonna text that to you.
Great. Well, they make their names up. So
yeah, I
just give her $100 and be like, can you say your name is Charlemagne? And then text me, and I'll be like, blocked. What the fuck, dude? I found one. You're just in Nebraska.
Yeah. She does like the 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. show. Totally off the beaten path.
Yeah, that sucked, man. Pulling into that, and then like it was just 5 strippers not dancing, and then 2 men who were pissed as hell to see me go up on stage. They're like, what? Like,
you're the ugliest chick I've ever seen.
Yeah, like,
and you have your clothes on.
Yeah.
This sucks.
Yeah, like just 2 truckers just sitting there. I remember like performing for them. They're just like staring at me, and I was like on the stripper, like there was a pole behind me. It was a nightmare, dude. Yeah, but it was like, all right, cool. It was $75. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the way it is. And that thing is that you need to want to do those things. Because for every time there's a comic that like is like, yeah, no, I don't do those gigs, man. This is my route. I'm taking this route. It's okay, cool. I wanted to do that. I wanted to accept those gigs because I was so excited to do it. And if you show me like somebody who's like has a limited amount of excitement or a limit to what they would do for stand-up, then I'll show you somebody who's just going to eventually quit after 6 years of trying it. So many people try it.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things that you got to be okay with it taking at least 10 years. Like I remember a comic at a Friars Club one time was like, he goes, it was Paul Verzi actually. He goes, how long have you been doing it? And I go, I think it was like 11 years in or 10 years in. And he goes, oh, hell yeah, man, you're just getting started then. And I go, all right, that made me feel good because nothing had happened really for me. I'd done Late Show, but nothing had happened in terms of like I was still walking dogs. You know?
Yeah.
Like that never goes away. I did the Late Show and then it aired. The next morning, I had to work at a dog daycare at 6 a.m. I was welcoming dogs in and some guy was like, were you on TV last night? I go, yeah. And he was like, what happened? And I go, give me your dog, dude. What are you going to say? Like,
It didn't take off after last night like I thought it would.
No, that's the thing is it never does. People always think that there's some kind of shelf that you can get to and then you're good. But really all you're doing is just taking some candy off it and that's it. Like you're not like, nothing is ever permanent. It's the career you make yourself is what's going to make you successful, you know?
It's funny you said you describe it that way because I think for the outsider looking in, there are tiers, right? Like when you stop walking dogs and you're able to sustain like a manageable income. Like that's got to be like a milestone where you're like, fucking hey, like I've gotten here.
Yeah, that's been a while ago. I didn't stop walking dogs like last week.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying like there's milestones where you the first time you get paid. Right?
Yeah, like
the
first paycheck. I remember taking a picture of the first time I got paid at a club in New York.
Yeah.
You know, there's milestones for sure, and you got to take those as they come and appreciate them, and stop and say, hey, you know what? What I'm doing right now is pretty cool. Even if I am walking a dog and then giving a golden retriever medication at some lady's apartment, and in between I'm running to go to do a comedy set for $12. That I look back at that and go, that was fun as hell. And I at the time kept thinking I got to get to the next level, but I was doing well. Like it was fun, you know. And that's why I stop every now and then. And I'm like, this is amazing. What do I get to do? It's a very fun and easy life as long as the work comes naturally.
I got to believe that if you go into a career, and I'm sure not every comic goes in like, oh, I know it's going to be 10 years. Probably, a lot of young guys come in like, oh, I'm going to beat the odds. I'm going to make it in 3 years. But I got to imagine that at 10 years, like you had to, nobody's, I say nobody, but it's very hard to have just a persistence and just stay with the grind if you don't also pause to be like how awesome is this? Like I'm a comic for a living. Like you have to pause, otherwise you just get burned out, right? I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, but then you have to meet yourself halfway, and if you got to appreciate and take things for appreciate the things that you currently have, but then also you don't want to get complacent. I know a lot of comics who will get they'll get some kind of routine club spot or something, or like even cruise ship comics. You'll see them be like, all right, cool, this is just my life now. I don't need to try any harder. And then for 12 years, they're doing the same 30-minute act, like 5 times, like different 30-minute acts or whatever, but they don't change a dime of it. I've had that happen. I've seen comics in real time realize that their act is out of date. When I remember there's a comic I was working with one time, and he goes, you know what my issue is if you live in America, he's like, so I was talking to it was a Mexican lady at this counter, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, my thing is, if you want to live here, you got to learn the damn language. And I saw him pause for an applause he used to get. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I saw him go, language.
Yeah. Right?
Okay. And
if
then
you agree with me, hold up your BlackBerry. You know what I'm saying?
It's like, yeah, okay, man, sure. But it's like, I saw him realize that, oh man, this is out of date now. And I saw that happen, and that scared the shit out of me. I'm like, I never want to do that. I always want to have my finger on some kind of pulse in this. Yeah. And I never want to be the guy that was like, oh no, I'm racist. I saw it happen on stage.
Just an epiphany in real time.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think I just feel lucky that the work comes naturally for me to want to work hard at this when it comes to editing and organizing and all that stuff, because there are people who are really good on the business side and I'm not. And that's fine. I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
Because the people they show me show me a comic that's great at self-promotion and selling merch, and I'll show you a very mediocre comedian. I forgot who said that. But that's usually the case, is when you see someone that's like, you gotta check me out, this and that. It's usually the most humble people that are like, yeah, I mean, come to the show if you'd like, but I'm not gonna be like, you haven't seen comedy till you've seen me. You know what I mean? There is some real arrogant types, in comedy. Because what we do is stupid. Comedy is so stupid, but I love it.
What do you mean by that?
It's people like to think that they're philosophers. It's like, no, man, you're a clown. I'm a clown. I'm making a room of people laugh at a certain rate. for a certain amount of time.
Your modern era court jester.
That's it. Anybody that goes up and is like, man, you don't even know what it's like to be inside the mind of a comedian. It's like, yeah, I do. It's like it's a clown car, dude. You're just, this will be funny if I say this. Yeah, that's all it is. If you're going up there and philosophizing or whatever, like, good for you. But my goal is to just, if somebody paid $25 to see me, I'm not going to tell them why their political beliefs are wrong. I'm going to go there and be like, man, I had a crazy fart the other day. Like, I don't care. Yeah. If it's something funny, I'll just say it. I don't give a shit. And it's so funny to me that people get upset by that too, where it's like almost they think that there's a caliber of comedy, like you're supposed to be at least shedding light on different perspectives of society. It's like, cool, man, that doesn't sound fun. Yeah. That sounds like it sucks, and I wouldn't want to go to that show.
Yeah.
I want to go to the show.
Knock, knock.
Yeah, dude. You know, like, yeah, the amount of division in comedy is so funny to me because I don't give a shit about what anybody else is doing. It does not matter to me. Why?
The other comics.
Yeah. What does it matter? But I see, comics or other people post like, well, so this isn't real comedy. It's like, they're laughing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the proof's in the pudding.
Yeah. That's all that matters.
I'm sorry. You said something a second ago, and I think, and you even said it on stage at the show here. You talked about the transparent. You said like if I tell a story about like a fart joke or something, and it's a true story. You said something last night about the transparency that you bring to stage, and how that changes your intimacy with the audience, and maybe as opposed to somebody else who just gets up and does rehearsed material.
Yeah. Who looks above the heads of people.
We're a consulting firm, so we're always trying to shed lessons on like leadership and connecting with people and being better leaders. I think there's a tremendous lesson in there about your transparency and your authenticity in telling stories, not like, that time I was in World War II, like that's not authentic, right? But you tell stories that are very authentic and you sort of bare your soul.
Or like in the moment. I would say transparency comes more from in the moment situations. Like if I like riffed on something like that, like last night, something early on my set, I remember I riffed something and then I was like, all right, you know what? That probably wasn't worth it. I don't think I got enough laughs for me to have said that out loud. Like that is funny because people go, I was thinking that. Oh, that's funny. That's because if I say it out loud, it's in the air and you can't, that didn't go as well as you thought. No, I said it. I owned it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think there's a leadership lesson there, like to just own your gaffes, and then you've addressed the elephant in the room. Nobody gives a shit.
Only so many times. You never want to be on it. You don't want to be. I think you get one per set where you go, that one didn't work. That's fine. I think every comic deserves to get one of those where you like, if you try to joke or something, you're like, all right, I'll be honest, that did not go as well as I'd hoped it would go. That's funny. But then if that's the fifth time you say like that one didn't work, everyone's like, yeah, man, start doing ones that do. Like, what are you doing? You're allowed to make mistakes as long as they're not persistent.
You, Andrew Schultz. There's a couple guys who, in the comedy world, who are your brand, and I don't want to put you in a corner, but your brand is much more. Well, it seems to be much more. You're a crowd work guy,
nah, man. Like yes and no, but you saw I did an hour last night. How much of it was crowd work?
The appearance is
because I say, you guys ever do this, or like you know what I mean, Dave? And everyone goes like, that's not crowd work. That's just me reminding you that I see you and we're having a conversation. It's not me saying everyone sit down, be quiet, and listen to things I wrote down. I'm saying like, hey, I'm gonna go up there and be like, yeah, I had this happen to me. Like I look around like to people and look them in the eyes and say like, I'm having a conversation where you're not allowed to talk right now, but it is a conversation. And then every now and then I will dip in and say something, but I don't want to talk at you. I want to talk with you. But it's like you can say because what I post online is a lot of crowd work, but I do get defensive with that because I'm like, go to a live show. I've had people be like, this guy doesn't have any material. It's like, all right, cool. Have you ever seen a live show of mine? Because 10% of it's crowd work.
I don't know who would say that because I think anybody who's ever watched a comedian goes, if that guy can get up there and riff for 60 minutes, and I think everybody knows you have some material.
That'd be disgusting. I wouldn't want to watch that comic.
But the appearance is that well, first of all, there are guys who get up there and do their material. Carlin's great, but he didn't do a lot of crowd work. He didn't ask any. He just did his material. He had his rhythm, his cadence. It was brilliant. There's a risk when you diverge from delivering, and I like the way you described it. It's a two-way conversation that you're not allowed to talk.
Yeah.
that's which is a
You
totally
have to
different.
make it seem like that.
It's a
Isn't
totally
that
different
sales?
conversation. That's a different story about like how when people start to talk back and you're like, okay, one word answer, that's enough. I got the mic and I'm back at it.
No, I don't go that far. Just because if I ask somebody a question, I don't like when comics do that too. When they go, like I hate questions. Like I think I told you this at lunch. When comics go like, what's your story? It's like, dude, you got to put some of the work in, man. Like, so what do you do? It's stupid. That's not. I'd never ask. If I do ask that, it'd be like there's a reason why I brought it up. For example, if some guy's like fully tatted, neck tattoo, I'd be like, what are you doing with that? You know what I mean? Like, are you a mail carrier? Like, what do you do? That's interesting. That's funny. But I don't want them to just do the work for me. So what I do is, my way of doing crowd work is how I would have like any conversation. If I'm going to tell you a story about how I went to Mall of America, I would start the story by saying, "Have you ever been there before?" And you say, "No, I actually haven't." I'm like, "Okay, well, I got to tell you about this." And I'd just tell you the story. I wouldn't go, "Hey, I was at Mall of America. Please do not talk. I was at Mall of America recently," and I just tell you a story where you're not allowed. Like, I start my stories or I start my everything with saying, like, for example, if the nipple ring bit, I'm like, "Who's got nipple rings?" You know, and I make. Sometimes you get somebody going like, "Haha," and you clap, and you go, "Oh, do you really got one or two? Like, what's your situation?" And you can make jokes about it.
Out.
Yeah. And then you make jokes about it, but then that could be a funny interaction. But then they end up, let's say they get quiet, or like they're like, like get weird. I go, okay, that's cool, because I was just with somebody. She had two of them, and I start my bit. Yeah. I have a reason to bring it up and somewhere to go once I want to leave. You have to have an exit strategy, because just going around, what do you do? What's your story? What's your story? How do you guys know each other? That's cool. Like, all you're doing is like that can get tired so quick, and I'll never do that like twice in a row either.
Opening yourself up into the audience can lead to contentious conversations. Like,
sure.
It can lead to tension.
But you don't want to talk to the guy in the third row that's going like this your whole set.
No, but a guy who volunteers something and then all of a sudden he's like, oh shit, like
yeah, and then I read that.
Handling conversation that starts out good and the body language changes and he's like, oh, like, well, I didn't like it. How do you? Is there like a science behind you back out?
I started this. You probably don't want to be a part of this.
Wait,
so
say that again?
I would just say, I'm not going to talk to you anymore, out loud, to the microphone. All right, this is kind of souring. I'm going to go this way, if you don't mind. Be honest. Yeah. To be like, that's what I'm talking about, bro. Like, you don't want to be somebody that's like trying to get one over on the audience. Like, ooh, that actually went better than it looks like, I promise. No, I'll just be like, all right, I can tell you're kind of pulling back on me. I respect that. I won't fuck with you. Thank you for coming, and I'll move on. That's it. That's transparency.
Yeah.
That's where then people appreciate that. But that doesn't really happen. If somebody's like I was like, oh, I was just in Amsterdam, and some guy's like, I love Amsterdam, and I'm like, oh, have you been there? Like, that doesn't happen. It's usually he kind of stays that guy,
yeah,
the one that yelled out or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, so that usually isn't the case. But there are certain times where, I choose the wrong guy, and it's some guy's dad. Like some lady participate. I go, who's this? Your dad? And then they're like, yeah. And then I'm like, you okay, man? Because you kind of look like you're not having fun. I'll have that. That'll be fun sometimes. And then I'll go back to them in 20 minutes when they kind of crack at a joke, and I'll be like, Dad's laughing, and then that gets a big applause. Like, yeah. There's so many things you can do to make people feel more comfortable if you do end up having to talk to somebody that's in the audience that isn't having fun. But I also think nobody doing it under 5 years of stand-up comedy should be talking to the crowd, because you can't even talk by yourself yet.
That's interesting.
You shouldn't. I've had comics hit me up like a year in being like, how do you weave into crowd work? And I'm like, don't for a while. Also, don't record yourself for years. Because
Why?
I mean, unless it's just for you to watch.
Yeah, just for you.
That's fine, yes. But there's comics putting shit up there 6 months into comedy, putting it on TikTok and being like, let's see if I get famous. And it's like, all right, man, let's just say one clip does go viral. Gets 500,000 views in 2 days.
Yeah.
Cool. You're going to do that again? You're going to do that 20 more of those? You're going to do 30 more of those these year?
Yeah.
Or are you just hoping that one 5-minute or one 18-second clip of you...
Fallon comes calling.
Yeah. And that's what it is. If you're looking for a quick 15 minutes of fame, go for it. Record your sets. Maybe something crazy happens and you can put it on the internet, and then you'll have that 15 seconds of fame. But if you're like genuinely trying to make a long career out of this, putting yourself out on the internet when you're less than 5 years into comedy is a quick way to make people put the bad taste in their mouth about you.
Interesting, because it isn't the double-edged sword then that it's very hard for you to build a brand if you're not out there?
But why are you building a brand when you're 3 years into something that takes 10 minimum? You You know, if you're in, you're not in college halfway through applying for jobs for the degree you're going to get. You're not applying to medical school 2 years into college.
That's fair.
You're going through the process. So, you don't want the cart before the horse on a lot of stuff. And if you're just trying to get in to like comedian produced shows and clubs, that's your goals when you begin, is to get in to where, so you can perform in front of real people on a regular basis. There's comics that are recording their open mic sets and putting them up. I'm like, there's nobody's laughing. Sure, it is a funny joke, but why are you burning that joke and putting it on the internet when you could really get that at a professional show with a professional camera and like maybe a better version of it,
Or worse.
And I think people want the attention more than they want the success.
I've seen a couple comedians, very early stage guys, who have put their stuff up either at open mics or in a fake like green screen with the dubbed audience laughter, and it just
that exists.
I've seen that. That's terrible.
And you know what, man, like people try and take shortcuts and it's just crazy. And also, I don't even know what I'm talking about. I had my route and I'm kind of speaking on that. The only thing I would say, I think, is a constant you'll hear from a lot of comics is fucking slow down and don't try and get famous 2 years into comedy. Because no matter how charismatic you are not good at comedy when you're 2 years into comedy.
Wow, man, that's interesting. You're talking about the long game.
Yeah, you have to look at it that way. If you're like, hey, I'm going to do this for 3 years, and if I'm not on top, it's like, all right, you won't be. That's insane to think that you're going to have a quicker trajectory than Carlin or Pryor or Bargatze or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just not the way it is. You got to know that like it took them long, and they're the best at what they do. So what makes you think you're this next? You're the phenom.
Do you have to have a shtick?
A shtick? You're saying like a character?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't do that. Because then you're stuck being somebody who isn't yourself. I think you might be. I think what you're talking. No, I don't know if you're talking about like your voice, like your comedic voice.
Just everything.
Who you are on stage.
Yeah, who you are on stage.
Let's call it your comedic voice.
Yeah, let's call it your comedic voice.
For example, Anthony Jeselnik, his voice is very dry, one-liner, dark humor that has it's all false premises, not based on truth. He even said in an interview one time where he's like, I think I killed my wife 9 times in one show. Yeah. You know what I mean? I've had 6 kids that I've never existed.
Yeah.
Like just to do a joke about it. And people accept that because it's just words. It's just jokes. But that is his voice. He's not going up and doing some wacky act. He's not smashing watermelons or anything like that. I think your voice is how you find or how you decide to convey your comedy. Whether it may be, if you're a more reserved person or if you are somebody who like wants to be a little sillier with stuff, that's who you like. And you slowly find out that you don't find your voice by going through a notebook and be like, I'm going to try this voice this week. That's never the case. What you end up finding is that your voice is just a more confident version of your own voice. I don't talk differently than when I do on stage when I'm talking to you, for the most part. I might be a little punchier on stage because I kind of design those words that way. But when I get off stage, I'm having a conversation. I'm not like, oh, thank you for coming to the show. I really appreciate it. Like, I'm still myself, just more confident and amplified,
You said something a second ago. You said they're just words. And they used to be. And I'm not talking politics. I'm just talking the way the world works and people's tolerance of comedy and the provocation, like being provocative and kind of pushing the envelope. And it has that changed? The way that we roll. You have to work in the world that we live in. Has your material changed in the 13 years that you've been doing?
You know what's funny is that I never. Has my material changed since?
Like just when you
because of you're saying the way the world is.
Yeah, because of the way the world is.
Have I let the world change my writing?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think so. Like, are you saying like, oh man, I was, I have a lot of stuff on, like abortion rights, and then
I don't know.
Now that it's risque, I don't like to talk about it. Like,
I don't know.
Or like race, or it's like I don't want to be too unwoke or something. Not really. I've been myself. This is who I am. If I do an interview or if I did a show, I'm gonna have the same opinions.
Sure.
Which is not. I'm not really that opinionated. Like, there's a reason why I don't really talk about religion, politics, and like stuff like that on stage. It's not because I'm avoiding it because of woke culture. It's not that. It's just that I don't find it interesting. And I do kind of get bored by the comics that are like, this is the senator out of, it's like, oh, God, dude, I want to talk, can you talk about like how silly a taxi ride was once or something? Like, that's what I think is funny. And I'm just trying to make people laugh at what makes me laugh, which is just my life and the things that I see and the way I see them. Because I don't really have that many big opinions. I talk about the king, you know, a little bit. I mentioned Biden a tiny bit, but that's just my funny take on it. But it's not like I'm like, you know, right-wing comics love them. You know, like, it's not like I don't want to. You don't want to be that far at either end.
No,
you know
right?
what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
there's enough people already on the fringes.
Yeah. I don't want.
They're not that funny.
Yeah, no. Once you go too far to either side, it gets real unfunny real quick.
Yeah, right.
You know, I've had people complain to me, get offended at things that I've posted on the internet on behalf of the person that was in the show, that took a picture with me and hugged me and commented, I love the show, thanks for letting me be a part of it. And then under that comment you see, I can't believe you would do that to somebody, that is horrible to do that. And I go, the person right above you talked about how much fun it was. Maybe don't just be offended for them. Yeah, like the lady with the dolphin laugh. I made fun of her, and I had people in the comments being like, you're a piece of shit, I can't believe you would do that to somebody, making fun of it. I'm like, she's in the comments, dude, look. She had fun.
She laughed during the show. I was making fun of her.
Yeah, it's so funny when people get offended for someone else. That's always crazy to me, and that's on both sides. People do that.
What's next? Like, is it acting? And you know, I don't know where comedians go. There's a lot of places they end up. Is it acting? Is it a Netflix special? Like, what would be that? What's that next tier?
So that's one thing that's almost relieving now. I mean, is that used to be the thing, the industry thing, like.
Sure.
Oh man, you know, I'm really just doing stand-up to get a sitcom, and it's like,
okay.
I never liked that side of it because I was like, I don't want to act. I don't want to go. I mean, I would like to write maybe in a writer's room, but even that, I'm like, my favorite time in the world is when I'm on stage.
There's a lot of comedians you see like Seinfeld and those guys who go, I'm so happy. Chappelle, all the big names, you know, they go, I'm so happy to be back on stage just telling jokes. And,
yeah. It's so simple and so fun,
yeah.
And if I can make my living doing that, then I'll be happy the rest of my life. But I mean, you definitely I want to set goals for myself. So I'm going to try and record a special next year after I run it. Like this year, I'm just touring a lot just to get my hour completely ready, and then I'm going to probably shave off the last 20 minutes of it to start my next hour. But then I'm going to put out a 40-minute album or 45-minute album or something like that, because nothing too long, because I think that if you put out an actual hour of stand-up comedy, they're going to take it in bites anyways. You know, they're not going to sit down and be like, the new Jeff's out, let's go watch that. And if they do, God bless. But why not just instead of doing 1 hour long special, why wouldn't you just do a 30-minute special on those topics and then release another one later, you know?
Yeah, especially if you have good material.
Yeah, I feel like that if you look at the old way of doing things and say that's still the only way we do it, and then you're stuck in those ways. But, you know, people make fun of it, like, oh, this guy released a 20-minute special. Cool, what did you release? An hour? His is doing better, and now you're mad at it? There's so many people get so upset at the way other people do things. You know, like stand-up comedy and stuff like that. And, like, the only thing I always say is just, like, do whatever's fun for you, you know? But stop letting people, like, they get so upset. I don't know where I went on a tangent there, but...
No, I was just going to let you riff. Just going to let you go. Fight the establishment. Last question. You've been in the game 13 years. You've hit a couple cool milestones that a lot of comedians, like guys like me, just think it's awesome. That's just to watch another guy's success. If you had to go back, and we just talked about like the grind and how you have to be persistent and everything like that. If you had to go back 13 years and tell yourself starting out like what to expect and like what you could, if you had to offer him like 1-2 pieces of advice, what would you say?
Write more. Write more. I'm pretty proud of how hard I did work and how easily motivated I was to go to open mics. Because every time I went to an open mic, I tried something new, and I left, and I would always say out loud to myself in the car ride home, because I wouldn't listen to the radio, no music, just complete silence, just think about my set and think about what I did. And I always told myself, you were glad you came out. Because I would find myself demotivated after working all day, and then 6 o'clock rolls around for a 7 o'clock open mic. I'm like, I just spent 9 hours at work. I just want to relax.
Yeah.
And I go, you know what? No, every time you leave an open mic, you're happier that you got something done and you added something to your repertoire. And so I would say if I were to look back, I would have focused a little. Created a writing schedule for myself, because the amount of material, if I would have wrote like hardcore written material and like screenplays or whatever it may be, I wish I had a library of that shit. But it's just a mess of notes and this and that, and I don't have a schedule for myself. I just get to it when I can get to it, which sometimes can go a week or two without writing a new joke at all, because I'm just busy and trying to catch up with myself. So I would say write more.
Just
And then don't date comedians.
Don't date other comedians.
No, yeah, because that's always, and any one of my friends or myself, when that gets messy really quick in terms of like, oh cool, now I'm performing next to you, and we told each other we love each other and hate each other. You know what I mean? Like, that sucks.
And now I'm going to go on stage and use our sex life as a joke.
That happens.
As
That happens where I've had friends on the same show as their ex, and then their ex did a joke about them, and they had to go up next and be like, I was the guy with the weird dick. You know what I mean?
Who hates small dicks? Am I right? Yeah. And next on stage is Bill.
Yeah.
Where can people find you on the interweb?
You could just go to jeffarcuri.com. It's like where my link tree is.
ARCURI. Mm-hmm. JeffArcuri.com.
And then that'll be like my link tree, which is linktree/Jeff Arcuri, and that's just got all my tour dates, all my social media, the YouTube, TikTok, because they're all different handles, because I'm an idiot at that shit. But yeah.
Cool. All right, dude. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me,
joining us, brother.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.